In this week's Torah portion, Rabbi Raphael Birdugo is perplexed by God bringing the flood upon the earth. It has only appeared once. God doesn't do this beforehand, he doesn't do it ever again after, he even says he won't do it again, which makes one think, is it like when someone does something and then feels they regret it? What's going on here? What is the purpose of the flood? Furthermore, Rabbi Raphael Birdugo asks, why bring a flood? Why not, we know throughout the Bible when God is upset with people, there's the sword, there's famine, there's the plague. God has a wide arsenal of different forms of punishment. Why this flood and why only once? And he says, now I'm just going to read his beautiful words just to understand sort of where he's going with this. He says, וכאשר עמדנו בזאת החקירה, ראינו כי לא נשלם חפץ האל בבריאתו לעולם עד החריבו ועד הקימו. Meaning, Rabbi Raphael is saying, but when we really investigate this with our minds, we realize that only after the flood has God really finished creating the world. He has not yet finished his project. Right? We thought the creation ended with the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve being banished. Rabbi Raphael says no. The project is only concluded until redemption, only after the flood. So why does God bring this flood, and what is this sort of final process of creation? When you look at the people who had sinned, and this goes back to the question, why couldn't you just punish them specifically? He says it's the worst it's ever been. People were not only sinning in their actions, doing everything to the point where even animals mimicked mankind's sexual misdeeds, but also in their minds and thought. There was no longer a God. People had forgotten God, and when there is no God, people do whatever they want. It was horrific in mind and in action. And therefore, it wouldn't be, once God is forgotten, it's not going to help to have, if you do some one-off, bring a famine, people might think, oh, it's a natural disaster that came to the world. No! God wants to embed into the world, in part of its creation, this one-off thing, this one-off miracle that no one will have doubt that it's a miracle. Why? Because it's the one instance where the entire world was flooded, and one lucky, pardon my Aussie, one lucky bugger, Noach. Why, by the way, Noach? Because he was tzaddik tamim. He, unlike everyone else, was good in his actions and thought. One lucky bugger gets to get away by getting on an ark and is saved. This surely is miraculous. There is a divine providence in this whole action, and that's the point. God wants there to be a flood. Saves this one family from which the rest, a new world will be created, a new world which knows there is a God. There is a God. After the flood, no one else doubts whether, some might want to go with other gods, but they realize there is a divine presence that created the world. We might get mixed up with what that is, but everything is different. We now know, we can't doubt this philosophically, we can't doubt this, heretically saying no, because there was the flood. And therefore, once God has done this, he says, I will never do this again. Not because he regrets it, he's God, his thought is perfect, but because he says we only need it once. Creation has been fulfilled. It is complete. Now that I've added in the flood, everyone knows now, will always know that there is a God, that there is a purpose to the world, and that is God's commandments, and so on and so forth. We know the rest. And by the way, I'll add in brackets something beautiful. Rabbi Raphael adds that in this time until the flood, this is the sort of Eden-like, no one was sick, people lived for ages, there was bountiful fruit, people had all the food they needed. He says this is the sort of life he thinks is going to be Bebiat Mashiach, in the time a Messiah comes. So the model until the flood is sort of what we're hoping for, not the Garden of Eden, but the world until the flood. Why the flood? So that people know that there is a God, and it was the only way that it could be done. Thoughts on the Torah portion by Rabbi Raphael Birdugo. Shabbat Shalom.